In the quiet suburbs of a small American town, tucked between rows of ordinary houses, there was a basement that smelled faintly of damp concrete and old furniture. That basement, though unimpressive to anyone who might have glanced at it, would soon become the cradle of a story that defined perseverance, ambition, and transformation. It belonged to a young man named Daniel Carter, the son of a mechanic and a school cafeteria worker, who had spent most of his life listening to people tell him what he could not do rather than what he could. His family never had much, money was always tight, and college was only a distant dream rather than a certainty. Yet Daniel carried within himself something that no one could see at first glance, a relentless hunger to prove that where you start has nothing to do with where you end up. Daniel was not the smartest kid in his school. He wasn't the one who scored the highest grades or won trophies in spelling bees, nor was he the star athlete who captured everyone's attention. He was quiet, often overlooked, but he was observant. He watched how people succeeded and failed, how businesses opened and closed on Main Street, and he paid attention to patterns. At 16, while most of his classmates spent their afternoons playing video games or hanging out at malls, Daniel spent hours in his basement with a second-hand laptop that his father had repaired from spare parts. The basement became his sanctuary. The cracked cement floor didn't bother him, nor did the exposed pipes that hissed whenever someone upstairs ran hot water. All he needed was that laptop, an unstable Wi-Fi connection borrowed from the router upstairs, and his restless mind. At first, his basement experiments seemed trivial, coding small programs, watching endless tutorials, and trying to sell old toys on online marketplaces. Nothing worked in the beginning. He would stay awake until 3 in the morning, staring at a screen that refused to show results, listening to the hum of the furnace, and wondering if he was wasting his time. His mother would call down the stairs, her voice filled with concern, urging him to sleep, but Daniel refused. Deep inside, he knew that every failure was a step forward, every mistake a hidden lesson. He didn't want comfort, he wanted growth. The turning point came one winter night when the town was buried under heavy snow, and the internet connection flickered on and off. Daniel sat with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders, sipping cheap coffee, when he stumbled upon a discussion forum where small entrepreneurs were sharing their struggles. Something clicked in his mind. He realized that while big businesses had resources and exposure, thousands of small businesses across America lacked the tools to survive in the growing digital age. They didn't know how to build websites, market themselves online, or reach customers beyond their neighborhood. That night, in his cold basement, Daniel made a promise to himself. He would create something that empowered small businesses, something simple yet powerful. For months, he worked tirelessly, often with numb fingers from the cold. He taught himself everything: web design, digital marketing, copywriting, even psychology. His school grades dropped because he cared less about algebra homework and more about solving real-world problems. Teachers warned him that he was throwing away his future, but Daniel smiled politely and kept working. Every dollar he earned from mowing lawns or helping his father at the garage went into upgrading his laptop and paying for better internet. The basement walls became covered with notes, scribbles, and taped diagrams of his plans. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his war room. After a year of experimentation, Daniel launched his first product, a simple website builder tailored for small, family-run businesses. It wasn't perfect, it crashed often, the interface was clunky, and customer support was just Daniel replying to emails at 2 in the morning, but it solved a problem. A local bakery became his first client, then a hardware store, then a florist. Word of mouth spread. Every success story fueled his determination, and every failure sharpened his skills. There were days when servers crashed and nights when angry customers demanded refunds, but Daniel never gave up. He believed that the basement where he worked wasn't a prison, it was the birthplace of something larger than himself. By 19, Daniel had built a small but loyal client base. Investors started to notice, but most meetings ended with rejection. They looked at his worn-out sneakers, his unpolished pitch, and his lack of a college degree, and they dismissed him as just another dreamer. Each rejection stung, but he refused to let bitterness take root. Instead, he took their criticisms, refined his product, and returned stronger. His friends often questioned why he put himself through this struggle, but Daniel knew they couldn't see what he saw: the future where his idea changed lives. 2 years later, he had a breakthrough. He secured a modest investment from a retired entrepreneur who believed in underdogs. With that funding, Daniel upgraded his servers, hired 2 of his tech-savvy friends, and rebranded his company as LiftLocal. The name symbolized his mission to lift local businesses into the digital spotlight. From his basement, LiftLocal began to expand. What started as a one-man operation turned into a small team working day and night, brainstorming, coding, and supporting clients who had never dreamed they could compete with larger corporations. Success, however, did not come without sacrifice. Daniel missed birthdays, holidays, and countless social gatherings. His relationships suffered because his focus was unshakable. There were moments when he doubted himself, when exhaustion whispered that he should quit, when bills piled up faster than income. But each time he felt like surrendering, he remembered the bakery owner who once told him, "Your website saved my business during the pandemic." That sentence alone became Daniel's fuel. He wasn't just building software, he was changing lives, one small business at a time. By the time Daniel turned 25, LiftLocal had grown beyond the basement. He moved operations into a modest office space downtown, yet he kept the old basement as a reminder of his roots. The company had expanded to serve thousands of businesses across the country. His platform now included marketing automation, e-commerce solutions, and customer engagement tools. Daniel found himself giving keynote speeches, mentoring young entrepreneurs, and being featured in magazines that once ignored him. He was no longer the boy who was overlooked in high school. He had become a voice of hope for countless others who were told they weren't enough. What made Daniel's story resonate with so many wasn't just the financial success, it was the authenticity of his journey. He hadn't started with wealth, privilege, or Ivy League connections. He had started with a second-hand laptop, a cold basement, and a dream. His story became proof that greatness doesn't require glamorous beginnings, it requires resilience, humility, and relentless pursuit. When he shared his journey publicly, he always emphasized the basement. He wanted people to know that the very place people considered lowly or insignificant had been his foundation. As the years passed, Daniel expanded LiftLocal globally, partnering with organizations to support small entrepreneurs in developing countries. He visited communities where businesses operated out of shacks and roadside stalls, and he saw himself in them: the hunger, the fight, the hope. He poured resources into training programs and scholarships, determined to multiply the opportunities he once lacked. His company became a movement, and his basement story became a legend told in classrooms, business seminars, and motivational speeches. Yet Daniel never allowed success to change his core. He still visited his parents regularly, still tinkered with ideas late at night, and still kept a corner of his basement intact with the old desk, the broken chair, and the laptop that no longer worked. He called it his museum of beginnings. Whenever young entrepreneurs visited him, he would take them downstairs and say, "This is where it all started." Not with money, not with connections, with nothing but belief. Daniel Carter's story became the American basement success story that inspired generations. It was not about the millions he earned or the accolades he collected, but about the principle that your environment does not define your destiny. A basement could be a prison for someone who gives up, but for someone who refuses to quit, it could be the birthplace of a revolution. Daniel had proven that success is not about where you are, it's about where you're willing to go, how much you're willing to learn, and how long you're willing to fight. And so, every time the story of Daniel Carter is told, it reminds the world that dreams do not need perfect conditions. They need courage, discipline, and the audacity to believe that even from the coldest, darkest basements of life,